She asked me to help her move. I thought it would be simple. Boxes, dust, maybe a few polite laughs to fill the silence of an emptying home. But the moment she opened the door, the air changed. She stood there in loose jeans and a faded white shirt, sleeves rolled to her elbows, a small smudge of paint on her wrist. Her hair was tied up, but a few strands had fallen free, brushing the side of her neck. She looked nothing like the careful, polished woman I used to see from a distance. Today, she looked unguarded. "Thanks for coming," she said, smiling, the kind of smile that doesn't quite reach the eyes. I nodded too quickly, pretending to adjust my grip on the toolbox I didn't really need. The house smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and something softer, her perfume, maybe, clinging to the air as if it didn't want to leave either. We started in the living room. She told me what to pack, where to stack things, but her voice kept fading mid-sentence, replaced by small silences that said more than her words. Every time she reached past me, for a book, a photo frame, a roll of tape, the distance between us felt smaller, sharper. At one point, she handed me a mug she'd forgotten to wash. Our fingers brushed, just briefly. Her hand lingered a second too long. My chest tightened stupidly, like it didn't know what to do with itself. "You okay?" she asked, watching me. "Yeah. Just..." I started, then stopped. The truth was too clumsy to say. The afternoon light was shifting by then, slipping through half-drawn curtains and scattering dust like gold in the air. She leaned against the window frame, looking out at nothing, her arms folded, her breath slow. "I didn't think it would feel like this," she murmured. "Leaving?" I asked. She nodded, but there was something else in her face, a kind of distance I couldn't name. It wasn't sadness. More like remembering. For a while, we worked without speaking. The quiet between us wasn't awkward exactly. It was alive, full of small glances, half-smiles, and moments that seemed to hang just a little too long. When I carried the last box to her car, she followed me outside. The sun had dipped low, turning everything soft and amber. She brushed a loose curl behind her ear and said, "You didn't have to stay this late." "I didn't mind," I said. The words came out lower than I expected, steadier too. Her lips parted, maybe to answer, but she didn't. She just looked at me, really looked. Long enough for me to notice the faint freckles near her collarbone, the way her chest rose with each quiet breath. Something shifted in that silence. Not loud, not obvious. Just a pulse of something real. Then a car door slammed somewhere nearby, snapping her out of it. She blinked, stepped back, and gave a small laugh that sounded like relief and regret mixed together. "Well," she said softly, "that's everything, I guess." I nodded, though it felt like something unfinished hung between us, like a sentence she wasn't ready to say. As she turned toward the driver's seat, I caught the faintest reflection of her eyes in the window, warm, searching, uncertain. And I realized I didn't want to leave. Not yet. Not after the way her silence had started to sound like something meant for me. Then, from inside the house, her phone started to ring. She froze, mid-step, the sound cutting through the quiet. She turned slowly, her hand still on the door handle. "Can you wait a minute?" she asked. Her voice was barely above a whisper. And for the first time all day, I didn't know whether she meant for me to stay, or to go. Variant, standard, title, She asked me to help her move, Part 2, the distance between us. ID, 61143. She didn't pick up the phone that night. Just let it ring until it stopped, and then silence. That kind that feels heavier than any word. We stayed in the half-empty living room. She perched on a stack of boxes like she wasn't sure if she should still be there. I leaned against the doorway, pretending to check my phone, trying not to stare. The streetlight outside cast a soft gold over her face. Without meaning to, I said, "You're really leaving, huh?" She gave a faint smile. "I've been trying to for years." Something about the way she said it made me ask, "From what?" She looked up, caught my eyes, then looked away. "A marriage that ended long before it ended. A house that stopped feeling like home." She laughed lightly, like she was embarrassed for saying that much. Sorry. You didn't come here for that. I shrugged. I don't mind. She tilted her head, studying me. You're kind? Most people your age wouldn't waste a Saturday helping an old woman pack up her mistakes. You're not old, I said too fast. Her eyebrows lifted slightly, amused, maybe flattered. You don't have to say that. I didn't. I murmured. She looked down at her hands, tracing a line of dust on the box beside her. You remind me of someone, she said after a pause. Someone who used to listen like that. There was a story under her words, but I didn't press. The room was too quiet, and the air too thick with things neither of us wanted to name. She stood then, moving past me toward the kitchen. Her shoulder brushed my arm, barely, but it left a warmth that lingered. She opened a cabinet that was already empty and sighed. I don't even know why I keep checking, she said softly. Habit, I said. When she turned, she was closer than I expected. Close enough for me to notice the faint scent of her shampoo, the curve of a tired smile that didn't hide how beautiful she looked when she stopped trying. Her hand came up, maybe to reach for another box, maybe not. For a second, her fingers hovered near my chest, an inch away, trembling like she wasn't sure what she meant to do. Then she pulled back quickly, tucking her hair behind her ear. I should finish this, she said, her voice quieter now. I nodded, but my throat felt dry. We worked in silence again, only the scrape of tape and cardboard filling the space between us. Every now and then, she'd glance at me, quick, almost accidental. I caught myself memorizing the way she moved, the small sigh she gave when she thought no one was listening. When I carried the final box to the hallway, she followed. I turned to tell her goodnight, but she stopped me with a soft hand on my arm. Hey, she said. Her voice had that unsure softness again. Thank you for not treating me like someone who's already gone. Before I could answer, she gave my arm a small squeeze, gentle, lingering just a heartbeat longer than necessary. Then she let go. And even after she stepped back, the ghost of her touch stayed there, a quiet, wordless promise neither of us knew how to name yet. Variant, standard, title, She asked me to help her move, Part 3, the almost ID, 61144. The next time I saw her was 3 days later. She'd forgotten a few things at the old house, or maybe she hadn't. She asked if I could help again. Just for an hour. When I arrived, the door was already open. Music drifted faintly from a phone on the counter, soft jazz, slow and restless. She was standing in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up again, hair slightly messy, a glass of water in her hand. You didn't have to come so soon, she said, though she smiled when she saw me. I wasn't doing anything. I lied. We worked in the quiet rhythm we'd fallen into, sorting, stacking, pretending that each brush of hands was accidental. But something was different this time. Closer. More aware. When I reached up to take a frame from the wall, she steadied the ladder with her hands, her fingers brushing my ankle. I felt it everywhere. You don't have to do that, I murmured. I know, she said softly. But I want to make sure you don't fall. The words landed heavier than they should have. For a long moment, I stayed still. The air between us thickened, filled with the sound of my heartbeat and the faint rustle of her breath. Then, a knock at the door. She startled slightly, stepping back. Her eyes darted to mine, then to the entrance. Probably my sister, she whispered, voice tense. She said she might stop by. She didn't move right away, though. Neither did I. The knock came again, louder this time. Finally, she turned and went to answer it. From where I stood, I could see only part of the hallway, her silhouette in the doorway, the brief exchange of polite voices. She spoke quickly, too quickly, then closed the door and leaned against it for a second, eyes closed. She just wanted to check if I was okay, she said, catching her breath. I nodded, pretending not to notice the faint shake in her hands. She walked back toward me slowly, the tension still buzzing in the air. I shouldn't let people assume things, she said quietly. What things? She hesitated, her gaze flicking up to meet mine. That maybe you're not just helping. The silence that followed felt fragile. One wrong word could shatter it. I know what this looks like, I said finally. Do you? Her voice was steady, but her eyes weren't. I took a small step forward. She didn't move. The space between us closed until I could feel her breath, shallow, warm, uneven. Her hand came up, just slightly, like she was about to touch my face, but she stopped halfway, fingers trembling in the air. We shouldn't, she whispered. I know. But neither of us stepped back. The quiet stretched, heavy and alive. I could see the faint rise and fall of her chest, the soft pulse at her throat. Then, as if the world couldn't stand still any longer, her phone buzzed on the counter, a sharp, urgent vibration that snapped everything apart. She turned away quickly, answering it with a shaky voice. I stood there, caught in the echo of what almost happened, knowing that whatever line we hadn't crossed, we were already standing on it. Variant, standard, title, She asked me to help her move, Part 4, The Breaking Point. ID, 61145. That night, the storm finally broke. She'd called to say she couldn't sleep, that the rain was coming in through the half-fixed window, and could I stop by to help seal it? It was late, but I went anyway. When she opened the door, her hair was loose, damp at the ends. A thin sweater clung to her shoulders, sleeves pushed up. The house smelled of rain and candle wax. I didn't think you'd actually come, she said, though the relief in her voice gave her away. I couldn't just let the place flood, I said lightly. But the truth was, I'd come because I couldn't stop thinking about her, about the way her voice had lingered on the phone, uncertain and too soft to ignore. She led me to the window. The storm outside pressed against the glass, streaking it with light. I knelt to tape the edges, trying to focus, but she stood behind me, close enough that I could feel the warmth of her breath on the back of my neck. You always show up, she murmured. I looked back at her. Do you want me to stop? She didn't answer. Instead, she reached past me for the roll of tape, her arm brushing my shoulder. My hand covered hers before I could stop it. We both froze. Her fingers didn't pull away. Lightning flashed outside, bright and white. For a heartbeat, her face was lit, eyes wide, mouth parted, every emotion she'd been trying to hide spilling through. I don't know what I'm doing, she whispered. Neither do I said. She exhaled, slow and trembling, and sat down beside me on the floor. The thunder rolled again, and in the half-darkness, we were just two people trying not to fall apart. She turned to me suddenly. You shouldn't be here, she said, though her hand stayed where it was, resting on my knee, steady but hesitant. Then tell me to go, I said quietly. Her eyes met mine, long, unbroken. Then she leaned in, her forehead nearly touching mine. The air between us pulsed with everything we hadn't said. I can't, she breathed. Her voice cracked just slightly, and that was the sound that undid me. I lifted a hand to her face, brushing away a strand of wet hair that clung to her cheek. Her eyes fluttered shut, once slow. You make this harder, she said, but her voice was softer now. So do you, I answered. For a long second, she didn't move. Then she leaned in, just enough that her lips hovered near mine, not touching, just trembling in the small space between. I could feel her breath, warm and uneven, the faint scent of rain in her hair. Then, somewhere in the distance, a car door slammed. She flinched, pulling back, but not far. Her hand stayed on my chest, her pulse quick beneath her skin. We can't do this, she whispered. But even as she said it, her fingers curled tighter into my shirt, holding on. Variant, standard, title, She asked me to help her move, Part 5, The Truth Between Us. ID, 61146. The next morning, everything felt quieter, but not calmer. I stopped by to drop off the spare key she'd left in my car. That was the excuse, anyway. She opened the door in a long cardigan, hair still damp from a shower, eyes tired in a way I hadn't seen before. "You shouldn't have come," she said softly, even as she stepped aside to let me in. The living room looked different, emptier, as if she'd started pulling herself out of it piece by piece. On the table sat a photo I hadn't seen before, her, a man, and a girl who looked 16, smiling like the world was simple. I nodded toward it. "Your daughter?" She hesitated before answering. "Yes. She's your age." The words hit harder than they should have. I looked at the picture again, at her younger self, standing beside the man who wasn't there anymore. "You never mentioned her." "I know," she said. "It's easier not to." She turned away, arms folded tight. "She doesn't visit much. We had a fight last year, about everything I didn't do right. About how I stayed too long in something that was already gone." Her voice thinned at the edges, but she didn't cry. "I didn't want you to see that part of me." "I already do," I said quietly. She looked at me, startled, as if she wasn't sure whether I meant it as comfort or confession. Then she stepped closer. "You don't understand what this looks like, do you? What people would say." "I don't care what they say," I said, maybe too fast. She shook her head, smiling sadly. "That's because you're young enough to believe that." I wanted to argue, but the way she said it stopped me. Instead, I reached for the photo, setting it upright again. "You don't need to hide who you are from me." Her breath caught. "You think that's what I'm doing?" The silence between us thickened again. She stepped forward, too close, her hand brushing mine as she reached for the frame. The touch was brief, but it was enough to unravel everything we'd been pretending. "Tell me," I said, voice low, "if I'm making a mistake being here." Her lips parted, but no sound came. Instead, she pressed her palm against my chest, not pushing me away, just feeling the rhythm underneath. "You don't even know what you're asking for," she whispered. "Then show me." Her eyes flicked up, startled, vulnerable. For a second, either of us moved. Then her phone lit up on the counter, a message from Lena. The name was familiar. Her daughter. The screen glowed between us, unread but heavy with meaning. She stared at it, then at me. "She's coming by tomorrow," she said quietly, "to help me finish packing." Something in her tone changed, not rejection, not acceptance, but the sound of a wall being rebuilt, brick by trembling brick. And yet, even as she stepped back, she didn't break eye contact. "You should go," she whispered. I didn't move. Because in her eyes I could see the truth neither of us wanted to admit, that she wasn't asking me to leave. She was daring me to stay. Variant, standard, title, She asked me to help her move, Part 6, The Choice. ID, 61147. The next evening came heavy with quiet. I told myself I was just driving by, that I wouldn't stop, but when I saw her porch light still on, I parked anyway. The house looked smaller now, as if the walls themselves had been holding their breath. She opened the door before I could knock. "You shouldn't be here," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "I know," I answered. "But neither of us slept last night." For a moment she just stood there. Then she stepped aside, letting me in. The air inside smelled of rain again, mixed with the faint sweetness of something she'd been baking to fill the silence. Boxes lined the walls, final, unignorable proof that this version of her life was ending. She rubbed her hands together as if trying to warm them, though the room wasn't cold. "She's coming tomorrow," she said. "Lena." I nodded. "You told me. She'll think I'm pathetic. Starting over this late. Needing help from someone half her age." "You don't need help," I said softly. "You just needed someone to see you." Her eyes flicked up, surprised by the steadiness in my tone. Then, quieter. "And you? What do you need from me?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. Instead, I took one step closer, then another, until we were inches apart. She didn't move away. Her breath brushed my collarbone. I could feel the warmth of it tremble against my skin. "This isn't fair to you," she whispered. You don't know how complicated I am. I do, I said. That's why I'm still here. Her jaw tightened, a battle she was losing. Then her hand lifted slowly, brushing against my chest, tracing the edge of my shirt like she was memorizing it. Don't make promises you'll regret, she said, but her voice broke mid-sentence. Then don't ask me to pretend this isn't real. The silence that followed was electric, fragile and unstoppable all at once. She closed her eyes, exhaling shakily, and when she opened them again, there was no distance left to protect us. Her fingers reached up, brushing the side of my face. I leaned in, just enough for her to feel it, to decide. For one suspended moment, the world narrowed to the sound of our breathing and the soft hum of the rain outside. Then she whispered, If I let this happen, it changes everything. Maybe it's supposed to, I said. Her lips parted, trembling, so close I could almost feel the warmth between us. The thunder outside rolled again, long and low. And then, finally, she moved, closing the last inch of space not with a kiss, but with her forehead resting against mine. Her voice came out rough, almost breaking. Don't go yet. It wasn't surrender. It was a choice, quiet, human, full of everything we'd been too afraid to say until now. And as the rain whispered against the windows, I understood, whatever came next, we'd crossed a line we couldn't uncross. The rain stopped sometime before dawn. When I woke, the house was filled with that faint, new morning stillness, the kind that only comes after everything has been said, even when words never really were. She was standing by the window, wrapped in a blanket, watching the gray light spill across the street. For a while neither of us spoke. The quiet wasn't awkward anymore. It was real, soft, lived in, almost tender. She turned when she noticed me stirring, her smile small but certain. You stayed, she said. I nodded. You asked me not to go. Her eyes flickered, remembering. Then she laughed once, that low, careful kind of laugh people make when they're surprised they still can. I was afraid, she admitted, of what this meant, of what people would think, of how old it might make me feel. I sat up, pulling the blanket over my shoulders. And now? She looked back out the window, the morning sun catching in her hair. Now I think, maybe it just makes me honest. For a moment, the only sound was the ticking clock and a bird somewhere outside. Then I crossed the small space between us and stood beside her. Her hand found mine on its own, fingers threading slowly, as if she was still testing the truth of it. No more hiding? I asked. She shook her head, the faintest smile curving her lips. No more pretending either. The tension that had followed us for weeks finally softened into something warmer, not the reckless pull of last night, but the kind of closeness that stays. She rested her head on my shoulder, whispering, You make it feel easy. It doesn't have to be perfect, I said. Just real. Outside, the sky began to clear. The world moved on, quiet and indifferent, but inside, everything felt lighter, like the house had exhaled. She squeezed my hand once more, then looked up at me. Thank you? For not walking away when you should have. I couldn't, I said simply. And in that moment, neither of us needed to say what came next. There would be conversations to have, lives to sort out, people who wouldn't understand. But for now, it was enough to just stand there, her hand in mine, the day beginning around us. She smiled, eyes soft, voice barely above a whisper. Coffee? I nodded. Only if you let me make it. She laughed, a real laugh this time, and walked toward the kitchen, her blanket trailing behind her. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. It wasn't even neat. But it was ours, honest, warm, and human. And as she set 2 mugs on the counter, I realized that sometimes the most complicated stories don't end in grand gestures. They end in small, ordinary moments that finally feel like home.